David McCormick, who's the Senate candidate, the Republican Senate candidate, told me actually he believes that can actually propel him to victory because they're narrowing that margin with Democrats of voter registration. But what does this mean for Kamala Harris in her chances of victory in Pennsylvania?
Even on CNN, and you guys have heard of CNN, it used to be a news organization, it's mostly a clown show now, they are realizing that the numbers are not looking good for Kamala.
All right, so Harry, tell us what you have found about how voters are leaning at this point compared to 2020.
Yeah, I mean, the voter registration numbers, if you want a stat that Republicans absolutely love, it's this one. All right, Pennsylvania voter registration, you register by party in that state. You go back to November of 2020, you see Democrats 47%, Republicans 39%. That was an 8-point advantage. Look at where we are today. Yes, more voters in Pennsylvania are registered as Democrats and Republicans, but it's now just 44% to 40%. Now they've got a 4-point gap. Republicans, have cut that Democratic advantage in half. In such a short period of time. They have gone out, they have registered voters. There are folks that have come over to their side who are previously registered Democrats. The question is, where are they picking up ground, Manu? Where are they picking up ground? This, to me, says it all. All right, which Pennsylvania counties did the GOP gain in registration? If you look in the counties where less than 50% of the population is non-college white voters, Republicans gain just a point. Where you have over 50% non-college whites, look at this. Republicans gain 6 points on average.
Wow.
They are picking up ground in the areas you would expect them to pick up ground, right? Those non-college white dominated areas, coal country in the Northeast, Southwest outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But the bottom line is the registration trends, the trends we've been seeing the last few cycles with Republicans dominating among non-college white voters, very much showing up in this party registration.
It's so interesting because David McCormick, who's the Senate candidate, the Republican Senate candidate, told me actually he believes that can actually propel him to victory because they're narrowing that margin with Democrats of voter registration. But what does this mean for Kamala Harris in her chances of victory in Pennsylvania?
All right, so all of this data, bad news for Democrats, right? Good news for Republicans. But there's one thing to keep in mind, right? You had that New York Times Siena College poll that came out yesterday that showed Kamala Harris slightly ahead, but within the margin of error. Why is that? Because take a look here. This is the Pennsylvania margin by party registration in that poll. What you see here is that Kamala Harris, I'm going to come over to your side of the street, Manu, is doing better among Democrats, a 77-point lead, than Donald Trump is among Republicans, a 74-point advantage. She's also doing better with those who are not registered with a party or with another party. But this nugget is key because even though Republicans have closed that registration gap, they haven't closed it completely. So the fact that Harris is doing slightly better among Democrats and Republicans, and there are more of them, that is what gives Democrats solace, is because at this particular point, that state, compared to, say, Arizona, slightly more favorable to Kamala Harris, at least in the polling data so far.
So what does this tell us? I mean, are we seeing this nationally? Are we seeing this in other battleground states, this change in the registration advantage, Democrats?
Yeah, all right. So this, if it was just Pennsylvania and we're seeing just one state, I don't think we'd necessarily be doing this segment, but I believe it is part of a larger picture. Fewer voters who are registered as Democrats. This is across the battleground states where you have party registration. Not every state has party registration, right? Wisconsin doesn't, Georgia doesn't, Michigan doesn't. But in the battleground states where, in fact, you do have party registration, there are now fewer registered Democrats in Arizona, fewer registered Democrats in Nevada, fewer registered Democrats, and, of course, the great state of North Carolina. So what we're seeing in Pennsylvania is being seen in other states as well. More folks are registering as Republicans as compared to Democrats. But we're looking at the battleground states. Let's take this out nationally, all right? This is party registration, but let's look at party identification. Party registration, of course, is you're actually registered with a party. Party ID is when you say, I feel like a Democrat today, I feel like a Republican today. They're correlated, but they're not exactly the same. But I think it gets at the trend that's going on here, Manu. All right, so party ID nationally. You go to October, November of 2016, Democrats had a 3-point advantage. You go 4 years ago, Democrats had a 6-point advantage. Look at where we are today, Manu. Republicans with a 1-point advantage. A very different picture, very much mirroring what we see in the party registration numbers in those key battleground states and Pennsylvania in particular.
It actually just shows you, too, why Harris is doing what she's trying to do. She's trying to moderate a little bit on these issues, trying to reach those very voters because the party registration is changing and the demographics of the voters are changing. And those are the people she needs to attract.
Absolutely. And the GOP leads by a point in party identification right now. The average when the Republican Party loses is the Democrats ahead by 8. When the Republican Party wins, the average party ID advantage for Democrats is 3. Republicans right now, Manu, are doing even better than the average when they win. If there's one little nugget that I think Republicans are really hopeful for, it's this party ID and this party registration data. It really points in a good direction for them and for Donald Trump.
Wow, we'll see.
So Knowles, I think that's a little bit of the evidence you were looking for. I mean, the reason I like that poll, and my audience knows I'm not huge on polls, and I think they can be manipulated and paid for and all that, but something about national registration tells you something outside of just, I hate the orange man, or I don't like the crazy Marxist lady. Like, there's actually something underneath all that.
Also, just look at how the campaign is reacting. To me, I share some of your skepticism of polls, Dave. Some are better than others. But look at how the Kamala campaign, probably reacting to internal polling that we're not even seeing, is reacting right now. She's made a 180-degree turn on her position vis-a-vis Joe Biden. Previously, she said in her debate with Trump, I'm not Joe Biden. I represent a new generation of leadership. Now she comes out, she says, I wouldn't have done one thing differently. I'm going to be Joe Biden's second term. So that suggests that her strategy wasn't working. Forcing Tim Walz out there to go become the man for Kamala, that's a change in strategy. Kamala going out and doing interviews, period, is a change in strategy. Even though she's not very good at them, they realize they have to do something. So to me, that says the internals of the campaign are looking really, really bad right now. Then you look at Michigan. The fact that Trump might have been able to flip Michigan means there's a world in which Trump wins this election and doesn't even need to win Pennsylvania. So the Democrats can play around in that Philadelphia machine. They can stuff the ballot boxes for all we care. Even in that situation, I still hope Republicans win Pennsylvania. Things might be looking so good for Republicans, we don't even need it.